Good morning, Life Point. How we doing? We alive and well in here today. Hey, my name's Chris Roop, one of the pastors here on staff. My actual position title is Senior Director of Multiplication, and everybody's like, that is the weirdest title ever. I am not over the childbirth section in our church, which is what a lot of people are curious about. It's all things to do with how do we multiply ourselves, both inside the church, here in the city, and even around the world. Raising up leaders, sending them out. And I say all that because one of the fun things I got to be a part of here recently, and kind of one of our dreams early on, as me and Pastor Nate had been talking over the years, was like, we have really got to multiply ourselves here in the city, starting churches, doing other things like that. And we recognize that we can't do it alone, that if the church is really going to make a difference, we got to partner with other churches. We talked a lot about this back in March. If you haven't seen that message, I'd encourage you to go back to the first part of March when we talked about what our role is as a church and how we're going to multiply ourselves. But all of that has culminated over the last about a year and a half as we began to pray. We've been working with churches, collaborating with churches in our city. 5 churches have come together for the purpose of planting churches. We started praying. We committed to 6 months of prayer, and we started that back in the fall, and that culminates tonight. And so tonight we are gathering. We started with the leaders. We moved into staff and elders, and we invited the church to pray. All of the churches have been praying now. And today we're going to get together at Forest Hill Church, part of this whole Tri-County Church Planting Network that we're starting. And we're going to pray one last time together before we just go after this. And it's really cool. We've been praying now for about 6 months, and it's amazing. God has already began to establish some things before we even fully kicked it off. So what I'm asking you to do, and I'm going to go ahead and say, this is one of those things you say, hey, we're going to get together at 5 o'clock for prayer. And then everybody's like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, it's like, you mean you're not going to have some people up there, some worship leaders, skinny jeans, cool preaching, some elephants being paraded, riding a motorcycle on the stage? Well, then I don't think I'm going. And some of you are like, I'm not even sure I can pray that long. That's a long time to pray. And all I'm going to say is this. If you're not a praying person, well, you probably should be. Tonight might be a good opportunity. We're going to walk you through it. Nothing crazy is going to happen. Well, I hope something crazy does happen, actually. But we're going to walk you through it. I'm just going to invite you to be a part of it. It's going to be tonight at 5 o'clock at Forest Hill Church, right down the road here in Fort Mill. We're going to gather together 5 churches, and we're going to pray for this movement in our city. Pray that God would do something incredible, and we're trusting him that he's going to raise up leaders, send people out. We're going to see some cool stuff happen. So join us tonight. Super excited about it. All right, so we started this series a couple of weeks ago, and it's called RECONSTRUCT. And so we're now into this 3rd week of it. And this is kind of a tough one. The whole concept is all around America, people are deconstructing things that are spiritual, the church, faith, truth, everything. There's this movement that's been going on, which is not unusual. Deconstruction happens quite a bit in culture in different aspects. Right now, it's all been on the church. And I mean, we're at the point now with the deconstruction movement that we're now deconstructing deconstruction. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, that's when you know you're deep in it. And so let me define what this deconstruction is about as it relates to this topic, and then talk about what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, the definition we gave a couple weeks ago is it's the process of when you start dissecting. You begin to investigate, and you're processing all the nuances. And in some cases, and in extreme, you begin to say, hey, because of this information, I'm just going to reject it all. You maybe don't have the energy, or maybe the pain is too great, or you just lost faith in it all, that you're saying, I don't even care about it anymore. That's kind of the concept of what's been going on. Now, here's where I just want to caution us. I think that deconstruction can be a really great thing. And so there is a negative that can potentially happen. The negative being when you get to the point that you let the deconstruction lead to destruction. The goal isn't that we deconstruct to the point that we destroy things. So let me say this. Jesus deconstructed. While he was here, that was the plan. He was deconstructing the way the current establishment of the religious authorities, the institution of the Jewish movement, and all that stuff. He deconstructed that, but for a purpose, to reconstruct, to rebuild it to something better. That's when deconstruction is a good thing. We deconstruct something for the purpose that we rebuild something better, not destroy something, okay? So that's kind of been our goal, which is where the topic reconstruction came from. And today I get the fun job of talking about the deconstruction movement as we've been deconstructing the church and what that looks like. So I get to talk about church hurt. And so I know you guys are excited. So let's do this. So first of all, let me just say this at the beginning. Let me give you, kind of set up my little analogy here to kind of help us process what's going on. Nobody in here has ever not experienced what I'm going to say. Everybody in here at some point has met that dude, that person, that lady, who talked a big game, but their actions didn't line up with the talk. Listen, if you play softball here at Life Point, you've met that person, right? They were amazing in high school. They never played. They were bench players. No way you could be that bad. It happens. We all know that. Everybody has watched American Idol and has been around somebody who thought they were the next American Idol. They're horrible. You know, they just didn't have a mother who loved them to tell them that they were horrible. That's the problem. Liars for parents is not good. And so we've all been around those people. If you're at work, you're in sales, somebody comes, I'm in the best salesman ever. You ain't sold nothing in forever. There's always that dude in the office who thinks they're amazing, they're the best, whatever, right? So we know what that experience is. We've all experienced it. As a pastor, I unfortunately, the worst thing, there's a lot of things that I don't like about being a pastor. I won't unpack my baggage with you today because there's a lot. But I will give you one. It's the worst. It's the worst. Anytime, I can't travel anywhere. I can't go anywhere to where I meet new people. And all I'm thinking about is please don't ask me what I do for a living. Not for the reasons you think. The problem is, as soon as somebody finds out a pastor, they instantly become somebody else, right? 1 minute, we're talking slang, dropping full redneck, a little bit of cussing going on. The alcohol's moving around the plane. Everything's working, and then I say, hey, what do you do for a living? Man, I'm not gonna lie, I've lied. I've not told some people. I mean, I was pretty deep in there before. However, I feel bad about that, I do. And so I've told a few people the truth, and it has never worked out well for me. As soon as I say it, it's amazing how quickly the King James language comes out, right? Instantly, like, "Oh, Fathereth, blessed thou with, I have attended thy churches as well." And it's so uncomfortable. Or they do that weird, like, charismatic, praise him. Yes, Pastor. Yes, Pastor. People need the Lord. People need him. So what I'm trying to say is it's not fun being me sometimes unless you're watching it unfold, and it's hilarious. So I've had a few people, like I was at a church and we were doing some construction. Now, why was I involved in the details? I have no idea. Somehow I was involved in construction details, which I have no business being around. And we were getting bids for doing some landscaping work, and one of the people wanted to meet. They're like, dude, we need to meet. And their bid was half of what the others were, which means you usually throw it out. This guy comes, no, listen, Pastor, listen. I used to work in the construction world years ago, and I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna take care of this. I know some people, I'm gonna pull in all these favors, and we're gonna do you a good job. We're gonna take care of this, because it's the Lord's work, and we wanna take, and he started talking about like demons in the trees, look out there. It got real weird, but all I could hear was discount, and I was like, I'm in. I shouldn't have been in this business is all I'm trying to say, because that process cost me twice as much as what it should have. If I would have taken the highest bid, I would have been doing great. I would have saved a lot of money after listening to this moron. What I'm trying to say is this, is that it's not good, and I was angry. And because this guy lied. I mean, he used the Lord in his lie. He brought Jesus in the whole bit. And I lost a lot of money on that deal, and I looked stupid. And I know I look stupid for other reasons, but that's an additional reason is what I'm trying to say. So was I mad at him? Yes. Very mad. Would I ever use his company? Well, I'm sure he's out of business. But would I have ever recommended him or anything else? No, I wouldn't. Now, who cares? At the end of the day, it's like whatever, you move on. I know some people get caught up in that. I moved on. It wasn't a big deal. Here's where it becomes a big deal. Here's when the consequences get bigger. You ready? Here's how you move from this kind of a situation. You're mad. There was money lost. He tricked me. To now I'm mad at you. Now it's going to consume my thoughts. Is whenever the shift happens and it's no longer about inconsequential things, it's about consequential things, it becomes a bigger deal. Because when somebody hurts you or lies to you or does you wrong, that's your boss. That's a much bigger deal. Or maybe it's a school teacher. Maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's a parent. I mean, I don't know, but here's what I have learned is that when someone you trust and you like and you appreciate hurts you, it hurts more. Someone who's in authority or in a position of authority, they hurt you, it hurts worse. And here's what I've learned. Here it is. The higher the trust, the deeper the hurt. The more you trust somebody, the more it hurts when they let you down, when they disappoint you, or when they do something wrong. Where there is deep trust, there is always a chance for deep hurt. And that's why when your spouse lies to you, it hurts more, right? When your best friend betrays you, it hurts more. Whenever a pastor or a spiritual leader does something that disappoints you or fails you in some way, it hurts more. And one of the most deconstructed topics of the day is the church. Now with the internet, people can now begin to share with one another their stories. And in the commiseration of their stories, they find deeper hurt because now they feel the injustice in other places and they're digging in and a lot more pain is beginning to grow. Here's what we know. 4 out of 10 Americans, according to Barna, 4 out of 10 Americans has left the faith or the church because of someone that hurt them in the church. 4 out of 10. We have higher expectations for church leaders than we do other people. That's just a fact. Because the higher the trust, the deeper the hurt. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Some of you in this room have been hurt by the church. Some of you in this room have been hurt by this church. Some of you, maybe even online, are watching, and you're online watching because you've been hurt by the church. Maybe this is a first step, maybe feeling it out period. And here's what I want you to know. Here's the truth. Some of you have reached out to a church, maybe a struggle that you were having, something you struggled with in the past. You were sharing with them in confidence, hoping to get some help, and they rejected you. Well, it's not supposed to be that way. Some of you have been hurt by a leader's failure in the church. Well, it's not supposed to be that way. Some of you have been abused by someone in the church, whether physically or sexually or in some horrific way. Well, it is not supposed to be that way. Maybe somebody has tore you down in the church or tore down a family member, gossiped, lied, hurt your name. Well, it's not supposed to be that way. You know, I'm not sure what your hurt may have been, and maybe it's not even specific to someone here. Maybe it's been a long time ago, but if it's not been said to you, let me say it. I'm sorry. I am sorry on behalf of the church for what somebody did in a church to hurt you. You deserve better. So obviously today, I want to look at why do Christians hurt people? Where does that come from? What's the roots of it? And even more importantly, I'm going to take a step past it. What is the path out of that? How do we heal from that kind of hurt? So before we go any further, I know it's an odd time to jump into prayer, but I want us to pray together for a second as we get started. Father, today, my prayer is this. There are people in here who have been hurt, and maybe even people in here, not even by the church, but God, today, my prayer is this. May we learn from Jesus. May we learn from your word. How do we find a path towards healing? God, my prayer today is that you would open up our ears to hear what you would have us to hear. And God, even more importantly, that we would open up our hearts to receive what you have for us, to find healing and hope, peace, and a path forward past this. God be with us today. Guide our conversation, we pray in the name of Christ. Amen. So I want to jump into Matthew 23. Go ahead and turn there. If you've been hurt by religious people in some way, please know this, you're not alone. Jesus also was hurt, and we're going to look at where Jesus deals with this religious hurt that he had from some religious leaders in Matthew 23. So you're in good company, and I feel like if we look at his path and how he handled it, that probably would be a good path for us in learning not only how to heal from church hurt, but hurt from unforgiveness, period, and what God might have to say to us. So let me give you a little bit of background. In this text, we're Tuesday, 3 days before Jesus is going to be crucified. All right, so this is before his crucifixion that week. He's in it's a public sermon he's given. He's in Jerusalem, somewhere around the temple, and the religious leaders of the day, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they're starting to grill him. They're trying to trap him in something and kind of get him. And so it's in that moment, in this interrogation, that Jesus does something crazy. He actually turns to the crowd, and he begins to share with them what he thinks about these people right here. Hey, let me tell you about these dudes. And listen, the cross is in view. The end of his life is here. And he's like, I'm getting ready to drop the bomb. And he's like, I'm going to level this place right now. And he's going to put out there the truth. And with the goal being this, I'm going to lay out for you the problem. So church, future church, you won't repeat what these religious leaders did. So he's going to lay it out pretty strong, and this is found in Matthew 23. So we're going to look at the first 4 verses. The whole chapter is just rich with this, and a lot of it. Let's just kind of take a few of these verses and look at them. Verse 1, then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees, remember they're there, sit on Moses' seat, so do and observe whatever they tell you. But not the works they do, for they preach, but do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and they lay them on the people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move with their finger. Verse 3, let's repeat that one, break this down a little bit. So remember, speaking to the crowd, verse 3, he says this to them. He says, so do and observe whatever they tell you, but not their works that they do. For they preach, but they do not practice. And here then lies the biggest problem. And he's saying, hey, the words aren't the problem. What they're saying as far as what they're teaching, okay, they're teaching you what the truth is and all that. That's part's good. Do that. Just don't look at their lives and mimic it, because they don't even practice what they preach. So he has this avoidance. Verse 4, he then goes on to be even more specific. Why is that a problem? Because they tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear. They lay them on people's shoulders, but they're not even trying to help them with the burdens they're putting on them. So anytime you begin to create this type of behavior where you are telling people to do these things, high expectations with no grace, no help to moving past it, it creates these heavy burdens that basically mess people's lives up. Here's what, at the end of the day, it's like this. This is church hurt at its best. I'm going to tell you to do something that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to live up to the words. And anytime you do that, somebody's getting hurt. So here's what I think. The question is, why do these religious leaders hurt people? And I think the reason that they do it, we need to look at a little bit of history to understand the roots of it and help us to understand better how it came from. So here's the roots of how it got to this point and why they were doing this weird thing and why Jesus is teaching us. So several hundred years earlier, the Jewish people were in exile. They then come back into the nation, and what they decided to do, the religious leaders like, hey, these guys have been out in exile for a while. We need to start bringing some of our faith and our practices and what we do back. Our religious distinctives need to be back in the forefront. And they haven't been doing these things for a long time. So they created it where we're going to teach very clearly, live out this expectation, and you Pharisees, you're going to have to be perfect. You're going to have to live this out perfectly. So your life needs to become, listen, the example for everybody to follow. Now, I'm going to ask you something. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the Pope or Paul or anybody else. How's that going to work out? Just think about yourself. Are you perfect? Are you going to do everything right always? They didn't either. The problem is they had to. So here's what they started doing. They started compartmentalizing into two parts of their lives. They created a front that everybody saw that looked good, as though they had it all together. But behind the scenes, they were making mistakes and not doing everything. So they had this private life that didn't match up to the public life. And anytime you have that, somebody's getting hurt. When your life is not lining up with, or you're not being honest and transparent about some of these struggles, then what happens is you start having expectations for others and somebody gets hurt. So here's what I don't want you to hear me saying. What I'm saying is that what they did was bad. But the reason for it, how it got there, was these unrealistic expectations for the religious leaders that they had to live a certain way and they couldn't confess their sinfulness or whatever, or else they would be banned. And so they started living these false lives that created these problems. Now, Jesus is going to respond to it. It's not excusing it. He's going to say, no, not only am I not excusing it, I'm going to give the harshest criticism that I've ever given, and it's going to be to these people because they know better. And this is the same message that he is saying to us as the church. Remember, he's speaking to the crowd, pointing out to them, here's the problem, you do better. I think today he's saying to us as a church, hey, here's the problem, church, do better. You do better, and here's what it is. Check this out. Matthew 23:13. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in. 6 times he is now going to call these religious leaders hypocrites in these following verses. And it's an interesting word because it's not a religious word, even though somehow the church has made it a religious word. It was a theatrical word used in the theater to describe people who were actors. It comes from the Greek word that means this: stage actor, pretender, one who wears a mask. But it does make sense, right? It's people who are putting masks on. When you think about the Pharisees, they're putting these masks on, looking good on the outside, while on the inside, they're not practicing what is actually being said out of their mouths and what people are seeing. So we learn a lot about ourselves. We learn a lot about religious leaders when we think about this, right? This is the problem. So here's the thing. I'm going to answer this question. Why do Christian leaders hurt people? Let's answer it. I'm going to give you 2 things. Number 1, the number 1 reason leaders get it wrong, they are not Christian. Okay, a little painful? Follow me. In other words, you think about it, if you're a Christian, you follow Jesus. I mean, it's that simple. A follower of Jesus is someone who follows Jesus. They don't wear a mask and pretend like they're following Jesus. Their actions and behavior is in line with who Jesus is. Does that make sense? And so there are some of us who hurt people that are religious, but they're not followers of Jesus. And the key distinctive of this type of person, here's how you can spot someone who's not a follower of Jesus. Are you ready? They don't follow Jesus. We said that one. But they make it about them. A follower of Jesus is always pointing to Jesus because they're following Jesus. I'm following Jesus. He's my Lord and Savior. They don't make it about them when people ask questions of, hey, look, you don't want to follow me. I'm a loser. I make mistakes. Let's follow that guy. He's got it figured out because that's what I'm doing. You want to come join me? I'm following him. You can spot somebody who doesn't know Jesus when they make it about themselves. When they make it about their position, when they make it about their power, when they make it about their name, when they're saying, hey, look at me, copy me, check out my brand, check out my social media sites, follow me. I got this really cool title. I'm very important. When you smell it, taste it, sense it, run. Because you will be disappointed. If you're following a person, you will always be disappointed. Can I say something to us as a church? It's real easy to pick on leaders. Let me say this to you, church. The biggest mistake that many of us make is confusing God with going to church. Confusing a relationship with Jesus by attending a Bible study. Maybe confusing following Jesus to being on a team, being an impact leader. That somehow those things are what make you Christian. Listen to me, only following and giving your life to Jesus makes you a Christian, period. So wearing the mask and pretending doesn't work. And here's the worst part of all. When you play this game and you make it about you, here's what happens according to verse 13. The damage that we do pushes people far away from God. And the irony of it all, we're not close to God and we don't have peace and we're not going to be there either. So not only hurting other people, we're hurting ourselves in the process. Why do Christian leaders hurt people? One, they're not Christian. Two, we have a sin nature. So listen, just because somebody makes a mistake doesn't make them not a Christian. I'm trying to delineate. There are some people, some religious leaders, it's all about them. They're doing this, they don't know him. But there are some who do know him, who love him, who make poor decisions. Why? Because we sin. It's a part of our nature. So listen, we love Jesus. We're trying to follow him. We have the right intentions. However, in the moment sometimes, would you agree with me? Some people who get under pressure might lie. Some people who are under pressure who have a problem in their past and have anger issues might act out in anger, right? Some people who struggled in their past or whatever, or has some things that they're struggling with, they might hurt people or make poor decisions, might gossip or something far worse. What I'm saying is we're all vulnerable to bad decisions even if we are following Jesus. And we need to understand that people do things. The hypocrisy of it all, the ultimate hypocrisy is to hold somebody else accountable for being a hypocrite while all along you're being a hypocrite too. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm really mad at them. I'll never have nothing to do with them again. Well, the hypocrisy in that is you're doing the same thing. And we need to think about that. We're better than that. I want to read one text. This is Paul. Paul writes over half the New Testament. Let me show you this sin nature struggle. Listen, we all have. If you don't understand this, you might be in the first camp, is what I'm trying to say. Let me read this, see if you can identify with this. You ready? This is Paul, Romans chapter 7, 15 to 21. He says this, "For I do not understand my own actions. For I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep doing. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells within me. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand." Now hear me. Paul is not saying that it's okay to make mistakes. This is not his excuse to do bad things. What he's saying is, and this is the biggest problem that many of us make, is whenever I start to say, no, not me, I'll never do it, you are the very person that is most susceptible to do something stupid. It is the one who recognizes it is in me. I have the capability, I have the ability, so I need to be around people who will help me, who know me, and I can be transparent with to make sure I don't do those things. Does that make sense? So here's what you need to know. Don't put your faith in people who fail. Put your faith in Jesus, who will never fail you. That's basically what Paul's trying to say, man. And Paul, over half the New Testament, look, don't look to me. I'm going to make mistakes. Follow Jesus. Church, listen to me. Don't fall into the trap of your name, your fame, that you're important in some way, your pride, that you need power, that you're significant, that you matter. What matters is who Jesus is. He will never fail you. Humble yourself. Know who you are and lie to him. If you've been impacted by church hurt, God did not let you down. A person let you down. And we need to make sure that we delineate between the two. It's so easy to lump a whole group of people together. If you've lost faith because of a people group or maybe even a person, then stop putting your faith in people and start putting it in Jesus. Shift your allegiance. Let me say it this way. I, as a parent, have had school teachers who have failed my kids and who have failed us as parents. My kids are still in school. I have had coaches who have failed me, right? But I still played sports. We need to delineate between people and the institutions. And that's the truth. At some point, let me just say this. At some point, if you attend Life Point long enough, we will fail you. We have imperfect people here, just like anywhere else. You're gonna have a bad experience, but don't allow one bad experience to eliminate the good that God's done in the church and what he's trying to do in the church. You can see, listen, think about it. If you can't see how the enemy is using this movement to separate people from the church, his body, his family, to minimize and to destroy what God's trying to do, then you're missing the bigger picture. God will always elevate and build people up and try to restore them and make them new. The devil always wants to destroy and destruct so that nothing good can happen. To stop a movement of what God's trying to do. Matthew 23:25. Notice what Jesus says here. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. This is the solution. For you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may also be clean. Now, let me say this to the church. Part of the problem how we got here and why people are hurt is because we're playing this game in many church situations. Let me say to you as a church, stop. Stop focusing on the outside. Stop trying to build your brand and start building up Jesus. I know we have the internet, social media, we got all of this culture that is driven by how we look, how we appear. We're all playing the game. We're all on there swiping, looking at fake lives and fake people and disappointed in our messed up life, just as messed up as theirs. Theirs is just fake. And you know, the Pharisees, the hypocrites on there with all these masks on, we're scrolling and it's killing us. Stop playing the game. Start being transparent and honest and start cleaning the inside of your cup. Listen to me. You want hope? Clean the inside of your cup. You want your outside to look good? Clean the inside of your cup. Don't clean the outside. Stop it. Stop behavior modification. Stop trying to be a good person. You can't. Clean the inside of your cup. Lean into Jesus. Start leaning into who he is. And guess what will naturally happen? You'll start looking like him. You follow and hang out with certain people, you look like them. Right? Follow Jesus. That's what he's trying to tell. Okay, that's enough preaching on that. If you're in the church hurt world, follow me. How can you reconstruct after deconstructing? I'm gonna give you 3 things. I told you I was gonna state the problem. Now let me tell you how to get out. Number 1, recognize your pain. Listen, I don't want anybody to walk out of here and not hear this. This is so important. I am not minimizing your experience. I'm not saying that your experience wasn't real, that it's not valid. I am telling you, I am validating your hurt and your pain. I want you to hear that. You need to recognize it and you need to sit in it and you need to work through it. Depending on the level of hurt, that will then determine the level of time and investment that you need to invest in getting healthy. Do you hear me? It's very important. I'm saying that when you've been hurt, it takes time, it takes space. Listen, some of you need space and time. You need to get away. You need to pull away from certain things, certain people, and whatever. I get it, and I'm telling you to do it. Some of you need to go through counseling. You need to lean into some professionals. Why? For the very same thing that I said to the church. You need to pull away so you can start cleaning the inside of your cup and getting healthy. Because when you do that, guess what's going to come out on the other side? It's going to start cleaning the outside of your cup. You pull away and do what is necessary. Now, the second one is the hard one. If you're in the middle of this first one, this one's going to be hard to hear, but you need a path forward and you need to know where you're going. You with me? This one's a tough one. Once you start cleaning the inside of your cup, just know this. There's a point when you're going to need to release the offender. So here's the big question. How did Jesus respond? The religious leaders are peppering him. He's going to be betrayed, tortured, placed on the cross. And what was his response? Now, his time was much more limited. I'm not saying that your healing is going to be this quick. His was pretty quick. But he is also Jesus. Luke 23:34 records his response to what was done to him. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He released them. It is impossible to move forward. It is impossible to find full healing without forgiveness. I know for some of you, the dream is revenge, that you want to destroy somebody and to bring them down and to see them pay. Revenge never gets you healing. Here's what I found. Revenge often drives the wound even deeper. It pushes it and makes it even worse. The natural overflow of a person's heart that has been changed, a cup that is clean, is forgiveness and healing. Now, if you're struggling with forgiveness, I don't want you to hear this. Let me talk about what I am saying and what I'm not saying, what I mean and what I don't mean. What I don't mean is that you have to go back into that situation, that you have to go back to that person, you need to go back to that place, you need to trust those people again, that you need to go and reconcile and build a relationship with them. Not saying that. What am I saying? Here's what I'm saying. Here's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is this: it's dropping the rock, letting it go. Now, I've got rocks up here. Some of y'all might have saw these. Why do I have rocks up here? Here's what I've learned. So when people hurt you, what tends to happen is you pick up, we'll call it a rock. It's this burden, this pain, this hurt, and you're carrying it. If you're like me, I have this problem when I get hurt. I start ruminating, what I call playing the tapes. And I keep going back and back over the story over and over again in my head. So I'm carrying it, right? Carrying it, and I'll think about it. And then I'll play that tape again. You ever done that? Where you start going through the whole scenario again? Oh man, if I could, this is what I should have done. Oh, this is what I'm gonna do next time. You ever done that? And you're holding it. And anytime you're holding on to something and you're carrying it, because that's what you're doing, you're carrying the burden. You notice it's a lot harder for me to really fully grab other things because I've got something occupying that space. Now, I'll say some of you don't have big things. You've not been hurt like maybe in a big way. Maybe in something small and you're carrying around a little small one. Yeah, you can do a lot more, but you're still carrying it, and every once in a while you remember it. The bigger problem is when you got 4 or 5 or 6 small things you're carrying around, that now becomes a big one. Problem is you don't always even remember what they all were. You're just carrying around this mess, right? And so it prevents you from grabbing on to anything else because these things that have happened. And over time, for some of us, if you've really been hurt, the bigger the rock, the more space it occupies. And some of us have been seriously damaged. Tremendous amount of pain has been caused, and you're carrying the big one. The bigger the rock, the more space it occupies, unless you're able to grab onto something else, right? And that big one, man, it consumes you. Listen to me. If it's big enough, it'll become your identity. That's now who I am. We'll start even using phrases. We'll give ourselves new words, won't we? We'll put titles on ourselves based on the burden that we're carrying around, forgetting that our identity is in Jesus, not in anything not in any of this other craziness, right? So we're carrying around this big one. Now, at the end of the day, we got to drop it. We've got to let it go. I mean, that's the thing. I've got to let go of this thing so I can grab onto what God has for me. Let me give you one more, and then I want to close. I said, recognize the pain. It's valid. Take the time you need, space. You got to work through to the point that you can release it, drop the rock. And number 3, re-engage the church. This one's not rocket science. I mean, it's not like something I need to preach a lot on. The bottom line is you're moving towards being back in the church, doing what God's called you to do, trusting Jesus in that situation, recognizing that you'll probably get hurt again. But I'm not following those people. I'm following him, doing what he wants me to do. You have to re-engage, begin to serve, begin to give back, begin to build relationships and trust. Let me close with this. So when I was in high school, I became a believer when I was about 16. And when I say believer, I mean full on, I know a lot of people say, I got baptized, I did this. I mean, when I recognized who Jesus was, a lot of who I was, right? Full life transformation. And I start following him, and I'm doing stuff, and I'm serving, and I'm already beginning to do some really cool things. I was in a very small church at the time, and this guy moves to the area, and he's kind of hanging out, and he begins to take an interest in me. And he was like a leader now in the church. He had money, he had means. He would always kind of throw that stuff around like he was somebody important. He was a single guy. And so he'd want to hang out. Hey, come, let's go do this, let's go do that. And we would go do things. And he would always kind of show off his means and his wealth and all this stuff. And then over time, he began to allow me to, as I came into his house, he would make other things visible to me. I didn't really understand it fully and why was it there, but inappropriate things. Like he'd have like pornography and stuff laying out or whatever. And I thought that was a little weird, but whatever. And then one day he asked me to go on this trip. He was a businessman. He had some work down in Alabama or something. I don't know what it was, but he had a visual problem where he couldn't drive at night. He couldn't see. So he said, hey, would you drive? I'll pay you to drive me down there. I was like, yeah, if you're going to pay me, I can drive to Birmingham. So we got in a car and went on this road trip for about 3 days. And during those 3 days, the conversation shifted. And I'm not going to go into the details. It'd be highly inappropriate in this room. But I think we're all smart enough to know. He started laying out things, inappropriate things between men. And would show more and would do things and say things in this process. I thought it was weird, as I should. And I was like, this dude is on a whole nother level. And so when we got back, I was like, I'm done with that guy. What a weirdo. And so I never hung out with him again, totally cut ties. I was like, I'm done. So I'm young. I'm like 16. I don't know, right? I'm not thinking through it. And so it's not until like I'm in college, even at the end of my college years, that it dawned on me what was going on. That dude was grooming me for something really bad. And he was prepping me. I didn't put it all together till then. I just thought he was a weird dude. But he was very intentional in his behavior. And I thought, I probably should let somebody know because he's still there. He might be grooming somebody else. I mean, I got family there. So I call my uncle, tell him about it. He goes and tells the pastor. And anybody want to take a guess how that response went? You're a liar, is what they told me. You're destroying this man's life. Why would you do something like that? I said, yeah, why would I do something like that? Have you ever maybe reversed the question? I wasn't there. I didn't live there anymore. I wasn't going there. I had no connection really at all. I'm like, yeah, why would I do that? Maybe because he's a predator. Was I mad? Because not only did he not do it, I'm not going to say my family members agreed, but they sure didn't support. Was I mad? Absolutely I was mad. Now my integrity is in question. They're letting a predator run loose over there. I mean, it made no sense to me. And here's the thing. Mad, I wanted to set them right. I'm a guy who wants to win the fight. And so my tendency is, as you can imagine, I'm going to run those people down. I'm going to go there. And now this rock that I'm carrying, this burden I'm carrying, I'm going to hit them with it. I'm going to hurt them with the very thing they hurt me with. That's our tendency. Our tendency is we get hurt, we're carrying around this rock, and the whole point of us carrying around this burden is one day we're going to get revenge and we're going to throw that rock back at them. And the reality is that never helps anything. At the end of the day, you know what God wants me to do? He's like, look, do you trust me? Are you following me? do what I did. Drop the rock. Let it go. Listen, now that that's out of my hand, I can grab something else. I'm freed. I'm liberated. Listen, you guys know this. Unforgiveness only hurts you. It only pulls you down. It only keeps you from God's best. It's the only thing that allows you not to have peace, not to move forward, not to make progress. Drop the rock. Let it go so that you can grab something else. It's the strangest thing, that the very thing that should have been that thing that made me want to turn on the church, to run away from it, God then changes my heart, calls me into not only missions, but into planting a church. And out of planting a church, I began to realize I don't need to plant one church, I need to plant a bunch of churches, because the problem is not the church, it's men and women who are stained by sin. What I need is the church. The church is not the problem, it is the answer to our city. Follow me. I know some of you think that's an illogical statement if you've been hurt. Listen to me. The church is the one that can allow people freedom and be released from their bondage. The church, if done well, people who are being transparent, people who are trying to live it out and trying to be real, not perfect, but are living it out, can make a difference in a city and make it beautiful. We can change the culture. We can lower the crime rate. We can lower the teen pregnancy rate. We can lower homelessness. We can provide opportunities. We can free people from addictions. We can save marriages. The church is not the problem. It's the hope of the world. And we need to invest our lives into it, not just any church, but doing it right to the best of our ability. And so today, here's what I want to do. I want to give you an opportunity to move past it. Listen, if we come in here today and we do all of this and we don't give you the opportunity to take a step, then we've failed. And so today, I'm going to give you this opportunity to take a step. I want to give you a chance to drop the rock. For some of you, the question is, are you ready? Are you ready to let it go? Let go of that thing you're holding on to? Listen, I don't know what you need, but let me give you several scenarios. I'm going to go ahead and ask. We've got some folks that are going to come forward. They're going to stand at the front. These people are going to pray with you. Some of our pastors will be here as well. Listen, we want to do several things. First of all, if you're the person who's in the church and you don't know him, you're that person, you realize, holy cow, I'm wearing the mask. I'm religious, but I'm not following Jesus. We want to pray with you. If maybe today you're a person that's hurt somebody, maybe you're the one who's created pain for somebody else. Maybe it's something from many, many years ago that you've been carrying around, because the burden of hurting someone and feeling the guilt of that is just as heavy sometimes for some people as the one who's been offended. Maybe today you need to let that go and get healing. For some of you today, you've been hurt by the church, and we want to say we're sorry. So literally, you don't have to explain it, but would you allow us to say we're sorry literally to you? I know that seems weird and it seems insignificant. Man, the impact can be unbelievably powerful. Would you come forward and let somebody say they're sorry? Maybe today you're struggling with letting something go, dropping the rock, and you say, man, I just need you to pray for me. I can't let this thing go. And it may not, listen, it may not be a church issue. I mean, listen, unforgiveness is rampant all the way around, right? I mean, there's people who've been hurt in their childhood from people in all kind of circumstances, teachers, whatever. Maybe today you need to come and say, would you just pray for me? Listen, today, make this your time. We have people here that would love to spend some time with you and to pray over you. Would you stand with me? Let me pray over you. Father, today in this room, would you move? May today be the day that we take steps towards healing. God, may today be the day that some of us take that much needed step towards healing in you, and we move away from people to a person, and that person is Jesus. God, my prayer is this, is that we as a church would own what we've done, that we would be a part of the reconstruction process, and part of that means that we as a church need to do better. We need to work and strive towards not putting on masks, being authentic and being real, and letting the world see all of us. And God, my prayer is this, that you would use us to make a difference in our city. God, would you move in this time? Allow healing to take place. Allow people to take steps towards healing. And God, we're going to give you the glory for what you do right now. We pray in the name of Christ. Amen. Feel free to come as we worship together.